likes it because she knows Hebrew, and so she'll look up the Hebrew words in it, and it's from a rabbinic perspective. So then the commentary will be from the Jews, right? Not necessarily, they may talk about Messiah, they just don't think Yeshua, Jesus, is the Messiah. So you can put your own into what it says. It's really good. Okay, the other one is Frank Seekin's book. I talked about him last week. And so if you're interested in the ancient Hebrew hieroglyphics, how Moses would have wrote when he was writing down the tablets. So Frank Seekins has studied that out for many years, and it's basically like a dictionary. It's really cool. So you can look at that. Okay. So today is Olive. Aren't you excited? It's way over here. I should have moved it. Move it up here in the middle. Okay. All right, so our first Hebrew letter is Aleph. It's not Aleph, right? Because if you studied out your vocabulary, right, would be Aleph. There's no A or A in Hebrew. Aleph. Okay, so Aleph has two forms. This is the print, and this is the script. So we talked about last week, if you looked at that, Leviticus 23, I think it's page 4, or no, 7. Nope. Page 3. Page 3 in your notebook, you're going to see different, this is book print on page 3 in your student pages, the first section, the orange section. So if you found Aleph in your homework, right, and then practice the vowel underneath it, that's going to be book print. So you can never, well, I say never, but there are people that, scribes and calligraphists and things that can write fancy like that, right? But the average normal person cannot write like that. And so when people, a lot of times when they start learning Hebrew, they're trying to write like the book print.
I know I do.
I did too.
I did too when I started out
and you
at
get all
Israel.
mixed up, okay? And so even in school, they don't teach kids that. They teach manuscripts. For instance, they teach you this, right? But the book shows a lowercase a like that. Because this
I learned that one.
Yeah, because this is book print. So a computer will print the letter like this. So if you're learning these, you need to know that that's also this letter. Okay? So it's the same with this. This is a brand new marker. Okay. So Aleph in print starts in the corner and goes down. And then most people look at it, and if you don't pay attention, it looks like an X, right? And it's not. So you start in this corner, but you come down and off-center it, and then start off-center and go down. So that's how you are going to write an Aleph, okay? Now you're going to learn script, and this would be, you do this part first, kind of like a C, and it stays in the box. The line, that's the other part, actually comes out of the box and is taller. So down here it would take up, 2 spaces in the ratio of it. Okay, so this one letter, where my eraser disappeared again. Those girls. Nope. I had to bring my own. Anyways, so you would write it, if you're going to print, you would write it this way. If you're going to write in cursive, this way. Now, cursive or script in Hebrew becomes your own handwriting. So we talked about this at the end of last week. So I learned, I can never do it right. I learned, I think, like this, something like that maybe, like a capital letter T for my name, right? But over time, it became my own handwriting, right? And so now I write my T's like this. Okay, so it doesn't, it's close, but I've made it my own. So this you're going to print it as close as you can to this, because that's print. Cursive is going to become your own. So some letters are very strict in that if there's certain parts and pieces of it that have to be just right. This is one of them that's not. So when you write in cursive, it could accidentally touch, or it can be really far away, and it's still an Aleph. So this one's an okay, if you accidentally touch it, you're not getting a spanking kind of thing. Okay? Or hand slap.
No.
Give me tissue.
Yeah.
So that's okay to touch. There you go. Okay, so Aleph is special, a special letter in that it's the first, but then also it is silent. It makes no sound. Okay? So when we transliterate it into English, okay, so if you see an Aleph on a word, we're going to, I need an example. Hold on. Okay, so here's a Hebrew word. We see an Aleph. We're going to translate it into English. So this letter is, we're going to translate to a B. We're going to translate to an R. We're going to translate, we don't know because there's no vowels, okay, because it's silent. So because there's no vowels on this word, we don't know what to translate that sound. So we translate the actual letter as an apostrophe. Okay, so it takes the place of an Aleph. And when I write an apostrophe like this, I know that that's an Aleph. Okay, it'll come up later. Y'all are like, what? But you'll get it later. Okay. We remember that Aleph is silent by our Messiah. Yeshua, when he came to this earth, he came with a message. It was not a message of his own, right? He came with a message from the Father, and he spoke the whole time, right? And what was his message? Repent! For the kingdom of heaven is here! Repent! Now, right? The kingdom's now. It's here. It's arrived. And so he had a message. But at the end of his ministry, he stood silent before his accusers. Okay? And so that's how we remember this about Aleph. When it's at the beginning or middle of a word, it will be voweled. So it's like Yeshua was voweled. He was given a message by the Father, and so he was voweled. When an Aleph is at the very last position of a letter, of a word, if you look at your notes on page week 2, student pages, notes and vocabulary section, the green tab in the center, and it says week 2, Aleph and Bet. Okay. So there's a, hold on. On your notes, it says Abba. On the example, if you go down about halfway down the page. So the very first Aleph on Abba has a vowel under it. Okay? So remember from last week, Ah, the little dash. So it would be Ah. And then the last Aleph has no vowel under it. Okay? So when the Aleph is in the last position of any word, it is silent and makes no sound, but you can't leave it off. Because if we remove this Aleph just because it didn't have a vowel, what word would it be, Hebrew veterans? It would be Av. It would change the word because this is the word for daddy or dad. Okay, and it would change the word to Av. So you can't, just because it doesn't have a sound, you can't remove it. You have to leave it there, or it has to do with roots. And it'll change the word. It can do worse than that. It can do really bad from daddy to father. That's at least in the same family. But if you take Aleph off some other word, okay, you can get in trouble. Okay, so all Hebrew letters have a numerical value. And so the numerical value of Aleph is 1, which is Hebrew veterans. Echad. I like to call you old people, but get mad at me.
I resemble that.
Just call me for dinner and I'll come, you know.
Yeah, I know. I say old or new students, they get mad at me. I'm not old. Okay. So Aleph has physical characteristics and it has spiritual characteristics. And this is in your history pages, which is page 11 in your orange tab student pages, if you want to follow along. Okay, so Aleph, as the first letter, physically represents an ox. So if you remember last week when I sent around, let me find it because some people weren't here. By the way, new student, even though he's not new, is Israel, and he's actually taken before, and Michael, and he is new. And we met Steve and Sharon last week, and Alex is not here. Oh, there's Monica. Come on in. All right, what do we do with it? the first line on the left is Paleo, some people call it, I don't like that word, but Paleo Hebrew or Ancient Hebrew, which is the Hebrew hieroglyphics. Moses, God telling Moses the Torah, he would have been writing, which I can't even imagine, like drawing all these pictures so fast, but they get faster and faster. And then the next line would have been in David's day, so when David was writing down the Psalms, that's what the Hebrew letters would have looked like. And then the third line is Yeshua's day-ish. People debate it, you know, they always got to debate stuff. And then you go all the way to the end, and that's today what the Hebrew letter looks like. So if you look at the first column, it looks like an ox head. Like literally the shape with a hieroglyphic was an ox head. Every time you saw an Aleph, there would be an ox head. Okay? So I kind of remember that by these two little horns sticking up like an ox. Okay? So that's the physical characteristic. And then every letter also has a spiritual characteristic. And so the spiritual characteristic is the Father. So in Hebraic mindset, the leader or head, that's what the ox is. The ox is the chief of the domestic animals. A lion is the head or chief of the wild animals. Okay, so an ox is the chief of the domestic. And so he's the head, the leader, the chief. And so of a home, the father is the head, the leader, or the chief.
I had a question. When I saw that, I thought about the Indian, from India,
Yes.
that they have the sacred cow.
Yes.
Does it have something to do with
It all
way
has
back
something
from-
to do with it. It's all related, yeah.
That's
Yeah,
oh,
they
it
worship the
is.
cow.
Okay.
That goes a little bit more over into worshiping.
Idols?
What? Yeah, it
Yes,
has to do with worshiping idols and because you sacrifice the bull. It's like they, instead of worshiping God and bringing a sacrifice to him, they're worshiping the sacrifice.
Yeah, that's.
Yeah, I know. But yeah, so. Okay. So the physical characteristic of Aleph, when I ask you that, I say, what's the physical characteristic of Aleph? You say ox. When I ask you what the spiritual is, your answer is father. Because in a home, the father is the head, the leader, the chief of a home. Okay? But we equate that to who? God. He is our father, our head, our leader, our chief. Okay? Okay, and so we get this from Genesis 1 because and God created the heavens and the earth, right? He's our leader, our chief, our head. All right, so that's Aleph. Did I forget anything? Okay. Okay. All right, the next letter is Bet. And Bet has two forms. Okay. Bet has two forms. We'll do it this way. Okay, so here's the shape. This is not writing. Okay. Bet, when it looks like this, there's no dot in the middle. It's actually a vet. The name of the letter is a vet. Okay, when you put the dot in the middle, it becomes a bet. All right, so the first form, this is bet, and this form is vet. Bet says B, transliterates to English as a B, and vet says V and transliterates as a V. Both letters have the same numerical value, so it doesn't matter if the Dagesh is there or not. They both have the numerical value of 2, or in Hebrew, Stein. All right. It physically represents a home or house. Okay, and spiritually, a son. So in the Hebraic mindset, a house is not a home until a child is born. Okay, so a husband and wife get married and they move into a place. It's not their home until a child is born in Hebraic mindset. And of course, in Hebraic mindset, it's a son because, right? The daughter is born, it's still on. But anyways, a child. That's why I say a child. Okay, so physically a house, spiritually a son, and then we equate that to who? Yeshua, God's son. Okay, and of course that's from John 1:1 because it says, in the beginning, which is who the Father was, right? He dwelled with, quote it. My brain is fried from that class. I apologize to the students who weren't in that class.
In the beginning?
In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, right? So
And the
Yeshua
Word
was
was
there
God.
with God, right? In the beginning. So the Son was there. And so we can see that in these letters. Okay? Yeah, but remind me again. Just hold off. Okay. So, let me stay with my notes so that y'all can do it. Okay. All right. So, I'm going to jump back. We didn't do how to write it, but I know this is pretty simple. So, here's a square. Now, on paper, if you have grid paper, or if you have it at home, and it comes like in little squares. So depending on how you are, if you want to use each square as one, or you can use 4 squares and write bigger. Okay? So you could do like this. You could say over, down, whoops, too far. See, I need a... Okay, come back. Down, and then you have to have this back porch. If you don't have a back porch on the bet or bet, it'll be a different letter. Okay? And then if it's a vet, it's like this. Zagesh, if it's a bet. Okay? Or you could use, I like to write this way. I like to use 4 squares and use it like this. Because I don't like to write little. And then you put your dot or not in the 4 squares. So, and I'm talking grid paper, which those grids are tiny. So it's however you want to do it. Okay. Cursive. All right, cursive is backward shape from this. Now, the bet is a wide letter, and so is the aleph. They take up like the whole square. Same with the aleph. Do you see that? Okay, when you go to the script, it's a little more compact, and you come around like a backward C, and then you just put a little bump at the bottom. It's a little bump up. And that's a script version of this. So this would be a vet, and this would be a bet. Now, the little trick to how we remember that is when the dog, this is called a dagesh. So this dot literally is called a dagesh. Okay, so a little trick we use for memory is that when the dog, D-O-G, is home, he would be what? Barking, right? When the dog is not home, he's at the vet. It works, I promise. I know, it works. All right? So that's how we remember that dot and the sounds that they make. Okay. So, talking about Aleph. This is on your notes. It says, Yeshua tells Yochanan, which is John, in Revelation 1:17, that he is the first and the last. He was quoting Isaiah 44:6. He came as the Shaliach, which means sent one, of Adonai, which means that he did not come with a message of his own, but only to say what the Father had told him to say. What did he want to say? I mean, he would have cleaned house, right? But he was there doing his Father's agenda. And he got the perfect man for the job because... All right, his ministry on earth reminds us of Aleph. Aleph represents the Father, right? This is the Father God, and makes no sound of its own, right? God doesn't speak anymore to man. He speaks through people and his word and other ways. So, to Yeshua, at the beginning of his ministry, was given the message. He was very bold and very vocal. And at the end of his ministry, he stood silent before his accusers, meek and mild. And there's the scriptures that go with it and the prophecy in Isaiah. All right, so Aleph is voweled at the beginning of a word or syllable, which gives it a voice. But an Aleph at the very end of a word is silent and makes no sound. But you can't leave it off. If you did, it would change the word to mean something else. So here's the first example, which I gave you earlier. So Abba, right? So the first letter, Aleph, makes no sound. Now, some of you that were here last week, or you already know your vowels. What's that first dash? Ah, right? So Aleph makes no sound. So you kind of skip that in your brain because you would do the consonant first, then the vowel, right? So silent. Ah. The next letter has the dot. B, right? So B. The next vowel, little T. Ah. And then Aleph is silent. So you just kind of leave it there, right? So Abba. Abba.
Did you say that the aleph is also silent inside of a word?
It's silent. It's always silent.
Always silent.
Always silent. The vowel gives it a voice.
Okay.
So let's say, for instance, this one, right? It's in the middle of a word. It does have a. This is the word Bereshit, and it will have a vowel. I just didn't put them on here because I don't need them. So there would be a vowel under here. You may find a word like this that it's not. It's usually because the vowel's next to it or in something else. All right. So, but if you ever come across an aleph that doesn't have a vowel, then it's silent. You just kind of skip it in your mind. Okay. Any other questions about aleph? Remember it? Just kidding.
You just have to know it though when you transliterate a word.
Yeah.
You got to put it there.
Yeah, so if you're translating, which I know some are like, what? But later on we're going to do exercises where you'll practice this, and we'll transliterate words from English. So transliteration is taking a Hebrew word and putting it into English sounds so that you can pronounce it, right? And so what that does is you can read anything in Hebrew. Literally, you just transliterate in English and read it. But if you don't know the vocabulary behind it, you don't know what the word means, right? Okay. So if you go down to bet and vet, I give you the little remember thing there. So you have buff. The dot or dog is home, so he buff barks. And then if he's not home, he's at the vet. All right. It is usually a bet. Okay. If you listen to it, it's bet. Right. It's kind of like louder. And then at the beginning of a word, and I say usually because it's not always. You know. Always, and then we'll find one that's not. Okay, so it's usually, if it's that letter is at the beginning of a word, it'll usually be a bet. It needs like more power to say Bereshit, right? But if it's in the middle of a word, usually it'll be a vet because it's softer. It's like buh. Okay, it's a softer sound. So ahava. Okay, so it's that softer sound, whereas something else is like buh, right? Okay, and in the middle of the word, but not always. I'm telling you, it comes up all the time. Okay, so bet is our first prefix. All right, so here we go with our English lesson. Before I started studying Hebrew, I thought I was pretty good at English. No, not. Terrible. Okay, so let's do, I usually have an example. Let me think. Alright, this is really bad Hebrew, but I'm going to do it to help you because I need English. Okay, so let's do garden. Alright, so in English, if I said, where's David? And you'd say, in, let's say, a garden. Right, you're like, he's in a garden. Okay, so in English, we need in, we need a, and then we need garden. And I still don't know where David is because he's in a garden. You didn't tell me which one. You didn't say the garden, and you didn't point, right? So he's in a garden. Okay. So in Hebrew, to say this, you only need the word garden. Okay, so which I could do in Hebrew. Gan. Okay. And then you would use the prefix for in. Let me do a different color, which is bet with shva. Okay, this vowel. Okay, so this is a prefix attached to the word. Okay, everybody know what a prefix is? Okay, so this right here is in English is in a garden. And we need 3 words to say what they say in Hebrew. Began. Began. So if I said, where's David? They'd say began. and they're still not telling me where he is because he's in some garden somewhere. Okay, so aleph, bet, is our first prefix. So some words, or some letters in Hebrew, it gets really confusing because the letter itself's name means something in Hebrew. The letter represents a number in Hebrew. And then some of them are prefixes that mean other whole words in Hebrew. Okay? So what I'm going to slowly do is teach you all of this stuff slowly in little chunks so that you can get it. Okay? So bet is our first prefix. When it's attached to a word that already exists, it means in, on, at, with, or by. Okay? So, and if you need, I'm visual, so I know, but if you need to see this, I have a chart for you back in the extras. Must use your notebook because I can't find it in mine. It's page, after this, it's page 7 for the new people. For the old people, I said it. Yeah, it's right before Yeshua is the light, the menorah. It's the page right before that. Did your mom do your folder right? When you got home? Oh, what if I does? She did yours right.
Well,
We take the week off though.
I don't know. Let's do this. All right.
I don't know either. Okay, all of y'all should have it. Okay, so right here, so you have bet with the shva. Okay, and then you have, so the shva makes it generic, meaning a. So in English, we need the word, or the letter, it's a word, right? The word a. So we need it to say in a garden. But in Hebrew, they only need the shva. The shva itself, the vowing itself, implies a. Okay? So the bet says in, on, at, with, or by, depending on the context of the rest of the sentence. The shva tells you that it's a, generic, and then whatever the word is attached to, right? So if I use the word bayit, or let's say the word house. If I said, where's David? And you said, bayit. He's in a house. That still didn't help me, but, okay? He's in, maybe I'm supposed to know what house he's in, right? So he's in a, is implied in Hebrew, and then whatever the word is attached. If he's in a truck, right? He's truck. That's why I said that's bad Hebrew, but to get you to understand. So the word that you're saying, the prefix attached to it means all of these things. Okay, let's say I said he's in a store. So chanut, bechanut. He's in a store. What if I said he's on a store? Well, is he on the roof? Right? So that really doesn't fit. What if I said at a store? Well, that fits, right? So it just depends on the context of the rest of the sentence, before and after, of how these work, okay? What if I said he's with the store? What if he works for them and he's with them representing, the company kind of, so, I don't know, kind of works. Now, what if he's by the store? By a store. He's standing by it, so all of the rest of this of how and why and what depends on the context of the sentence that you're saying.
When did they start adding vowels? Like, was the language in existence a really long time first?
Yes.
Or
The Masoretics added the vowing system. The vowels are just sounds, right? So vowels are just sounds. The sounds already existed along with the language all along.
right.
But them writing them down and creating these dots and dashes and stuff was because they were losing their language and they didn't know how to teach it because it was all audible. So the writing down of it came with the Masoretics. And they wrote down the system. Okay. All right, any questions? We go over it. I'm telling you, you don't have to know all of this stuff right now. We go over it and over it and over it, right, people? Over it and over it. Tell them I'm a broken record.
Which is good.
All right, good.
Takes a while.
All right, did I cover everything? You weren't here. She's my backup. And I did.
Does this
Okay.
page,
You're covering what I was doing wrong.
does this page represent most of all the prefixes there are?
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Well,
And the back has suffixes. And this is a generic.
And there are some exceptions, but yeah.
This was a chart that I used to draw all the time on the back of this chart in chalk, and it was a pain in the butt, so somebody made it for me. So I quit having to draw it out. So, and that's yours for this. Okay. So I promise we'll go over it and over it, and as we add more, it'll start making more sense. Okay. Okay. So I did not bring it today because I was out of town. I'll try to bring it next week. Some of you already have it, but if you have graph paper at home, you could just create your own. But I normally give out a sheet that has the.
I really like this. This has helped me.
Oh yeah, that works too. You can get all kinds of different notebooks that have graph charts already in them. Graph paper.
Get it on Amazon.
Where is my?
no.
Hold on, let me look really fast. Maybe it's over here.
You guys have to use it.
Can't
You
find
go
it.
work
Okay,
and
you
use
had
it.
it out.
This time, that's why I'm behind.
You did when I flipped through the paper. You found it really
That's
close.
it.
Like this.
Right here.
Okay.
You want to hold your finger there?
I'm taking
Yeah,
Wednesday
you're
off.
taking
Anyways, I
gonna
will
let you
give
take
you
Wednesday off.
copies of these next
Well
week.
dressed.
But in the meantime, so you have the letter. This is what I was talking about using the one whole box, one tiny box as your letter, and you could just go aleph, 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 aleph all the way across, and then script all the way across, right? So as I teach you a letter, you can practice that one letter on this one sheet, or you can get a whole grid sheet, or you can get a whole notebook like he has, and just get them all out there, practice. Because putting it pen to paper helps.
It's the biggest help there is. Right?
Yes. And then one thing that I want to tell you is that, and this is only from experience, I would at least write out the first line and the second cursive and then bring it to me and let me see it and make sure, because you may be interpreting it wrong and writing it completely backwards, or wrong. Because I've even had my kids that I teach, they'll bring it and I'm like, what is that letter? Well, that's what I know, and so you have to kind of adjust it.
Hebrew
Right.
dyslexia.
Yeah, well, not just that, but if you're writing completely wrong, then you got a whole page of wrong written letters. That's not doing you any good. So, write a few and then you can check them and make sure you got it before you go. I did. Okay. Alrighty. Covered all that. Okay, so practice writing your letters. Now, the other thing, part of homework, just so everybody can hear that I said you had to do homework.
Yeah.
Just one person in this room that likes to aggravate me. Page 3 is going to be your best friend. All right, so the new people have the already numbered pages, and if you haven't, you want to number. So this is Leviticus 23, chapter 23. This is the passage of scripture in Hebrew on the appointed times. So Shabbat, what's the next one? Passover, the Feast of Unleavened Bread, Shavuot, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and the Feast of Tabernacles, and Shamini Atzeret. Okay, so all the holidays are holy days of God. So he's talking about here, and it's basically at the beginning, Hebrews on right to left, and so he says, Veyomer Adonai El Moshe Leomer. So it says, and God said to Moses, say, and it's talking about to the children of Israel, blah, 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 you're to keep these, and the first one, Shabbat. Okay, so we're not worried about that. I don't expect you to read it or know it, but I want you to use this page. Number one, it's different font. So book print and all the other things I have given you, this is a different font than what you will normally see. Okay, and so you're going to start on the right-hand side, and you're going to use your finger, and this is going to be like a word search. So you're going to go here, and you're going to find the first aleph, because we've learned aleph, and you're going to stop there, and you're going to look at the vowel underneath, next to it, above it, wherever the vowel is, and you're going to practice that vowel. Okay, Aleph silent. It makes no sound, so you don't have to worry about that. Okay, so what's that first one? Anybody remember?
Eh.
Right, eh. And then you go and you find the next Aleph. Oh, that one has no vowel, right? We talked about Alephs with no vowels, so you just skip that one. Keep going, find the next one. What's that one? Eh. Keep going. What's that one? Eh. Keep going. Ah. Right? Ah. And keep going. Ah. Right? Okay, and then go down to the next line, but on the right, and keep going again. So literally go through the whole page, finding all the Alephs, and you stop and practice the vowel. So that gets you 2 practices, well, really 1 with the Aleph. Okay, but now you know bet. So now you're going to start back at the beginning, and you're going to go with bet. So let's find bet. So you're going to find the first one. Stop. It's a bet because it has the dot, and then the vowel under it. Eh, right? So bet. Then you're going to go find the next one. Another, same thing, right? Okay, find the next one. Now that one is a bet. It has a shva, so it could either be be or it could be b and stop, right? Be that stop with no sound. So you don't know, you're not supposed to know, so you just practice your 2 ways it could sound and then keep going. So you go to the next one. No more in that line. Go to the next line. Okay, so you see what I'm saying? And now go all the way through with bets. Now start at the beginning and go with vets. So, or you could have done it all along. You could have stopped it at the vet. But whatever, however you want to do it. And so that is going to be the thing that's going to, besides learning your vowels, this is what's going to help you start practicing reading, because that's our goal, right? Is to get to reading. Okay. And I know, I mean, it seems elementary, but it is. You're only in preschool. Right? All right. Because you have to be in preschool, because I'm only in 3rd grade. Barely in 3rd grade. All right, so we did all of that. Okay. So, Grant Luton. So everybody had your book, read your book. Michael, did you do the book? Okay, good. All right, so the homework was to read all of the introduction and the first chapter. Did you read the first chapter? Now you have to read the first chapter and the second chapter this week. You're digging yourself in a hole.
Always in a hole.
Always in a hole.
It's so interesting, though. It wouldn't
I
be
know,
that.
that's what I'm trying to
No.
tell
I'm
you.
going to devour it. I mark in the front of mine every time I've read it. Oh, I didn't mark the last because I'm up to 14, 15, so. But anyway. Okay. So who remembers anything from the introduction? Except for Israel. And except for him this week. Anything from the introduction. Anything. Just name one thing that you learned in the introduction that you read.
Everything is letters, pictures, and
So that
symbols.
Hebrew
There
is
you
from
go.
right to left.
Hebrews from right to left. Hebrew is letters, pictures, and numbers. What's Yeshua's name? That was a trick question. What's Jesus' name? Yeshua, right? Okay, and then anything from the first chapter of Aleph that stuck out to you? We're about to go over some things, so but you can say it anyways. Anything Aleph that really stuck out to you?
Well, the numbers and how they add up, and the